Hello and welcome to the formal review. Today, we will be looking at the 2020 film, Da 5 Bloods. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the review.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the formal review. This is season 3, episode 13, and I thank you all for tuning in once again. Now before I get started, I do want to preface this episode with a slight spoiler warning. As always, I will do my best not to ruin the movie for you, and I do suggest that you see the film before hearing what I have to say about it so you fully understand everything. However, if you don't care about that or you just want to hear my thoughts on the film, keep listening. So Da 5 Bloods is a war drama film directed and produced by Spike Lee. It stars Delroy Lindo, Jonathan Majors, Clark Peters, Norm Lewis, Isaiah Whitlock Jr., Melanie Thierry, Paul Walter Hauser, Jasper Paconin, sorry if I mispronounced it, Jean Reno, and Chadwick Boseman. Follows a group of aging Vietnam War veterans who return to the country in search of treasure they buried while stationed there. Furthermore, Otis, played by Peters, Paul, played by Lindo, Melvin, played by Whitlock, and Eddie, played by Lewis, also are trying to retrieve their squad commander, played by Boseman's remains for a proper military burial. Spike Lee is known as one of Hollywood's best storytellers, and his films are typically referred to as Spike Lee joints. He received his Master's of Fine Arts from New York University in 1983, and his first feature film, She's Gotta Have It, was released about 3 years later. Over the course of his career, he's directed 23 films, and only 6 of them were not written by him. He's also starred in 10 of them, and his most famous works are She's Gotta Have It, 1989's Do the Right Thing, 1990's Mo Better Blues, 1991's Jungle Fever, 1992's Malcolm X, 1998's He's Got Game, 2002's 25th Hour, 2006's Inside Man, 2015's Chirac, and 2018's Black Klansman. In addition to his film work, he has also directed a number of music videos by artists such as Prince, Michael Jackson, and Eminem. His work has won him numerous awards, including an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay, a Student Academy Award, a BAFTA Award for Best Adapted Screenplay, 2 Emmy Awards, 2 Peabody Awards, and the Cannes Grand Prix. Also interestingly, prior to Da 5 Bloods, Inside Man is his biggest box office hit, and Black Klansman is the film that he won his only Academy Award for. His films usually explore race relations, colorism in the black community, the role of media in contemporary life, urban crime, and poverty, and other political issues. If you aren't following me on social media, Spike Lee is one of my favorite directors, mostly because of the themes and messages that he displays in his films. I believe a film's themes and messages are the key qualities that make a film a masterpiece and beat out the test of time. I'm not saying all of Spike Lee's films are masterpieces, but I do think that this specific quality is why I always look forward to his films. You can love a film for its outrageousness or the actors in it, and we can love a film for its portrayal of a character. A great director likely can make audiences always see their films, like for myself. However, I think that these things do not make a great film. It has to have all these things. Actors can age and directors can lose their touch. Themes and messages are the things that will continue on. Themes are the central focus of the story and narrative that the film is showing. It expresses the intended lesson, conclusion, message, or point of view of the director or screenwriter. Themes are what connect all parts of the story, such as the characters, plot, conflict, setting, and the events within the movie. The theme keeps the audience engaged throughout the film. There's been this story in the past in Hollywood that an idealistic screenwriter presented a movie mogul with the message of his script, only to be told, if you have a message, call Western Union. And essentially, this story suggests that movies are pure entertainment, and using them to offer some sort of social message only makes it more likely for them to fail. However, I feel that there is no form of pop culture, which includes movies obviously, that is not driven by themes and messages. And I only say all this to emphasize that this is what creates a masterpiece. Films that lack themes and messages can be good, but to me, they will never be great. And the same goes for when a film has a theme but is utter trash on everything else. And I think Spike Lee has had films that fall into both of those categories. Prior to seeing this movie, I would say that my personal favorites are Do the Right Thing, Black Klansman, He's Got Game, Inside Man, and Malcolm X. If you don't know of my love for that last film, it is one of my favorites of all time, and to me, it defines what a biopic should be, while also telling a very good story about redemption and understanding. I will say one of the reasons why I like 4 out of 5 of these films so much is due to the starring actors, Denzel Washington and his son John David Washington, with the former being my favorite actor of all time, and so far I've really enjoyed what John David Washington has put out. Anyway, back to the film at hand. Voting isn't just going to the polls anymore on election day. Options like early voting, mail-in voting, and ballot drop boxes are available to more voters and are growing in popularity. How to Vote is a tool created by Democracy Works, and it breaks down the options your state offers by forecasting a ballot, empowering you to decide where and when to vote. Democracy works best when we all vote, but misinformation and confusion about election procedures have resulted in low voter turnout. How to Vote takes the guesswork out of the voting process. It is easy to use and helps folks from all over the country overcome many of the process barriers to voting. It is committed to helping you vote no matter what. You can use the How to Vote tool to sign up for election reminders, see what's on your ballot, get step-by-step assistance requesting your mail ballot, explore your options for returning your mail-in ballot, check your voter registration status, and find your local polling site and make sure that you have an appropriate ID to bring with you. Decide when and where you'll vote this year at howto.vote. As with a lot of his films, Lee is able to explore themes and messages in a very compelling way. In this film, he is able to mix this fictional story with real-life imagery absolutely flawlessly. One of the most obvious allegories in this film is how it shows the duality of war in general deals with the black community. These men go to this country, fight for the United States against this enemy that did absolutely nothing directly to them. They then return to a country that they are treated as secondary citizens. And this idea can be applied to almost all veterans in general, but it is especially important toward the black community. The Civil Rights Act was signed in 1964, and the American intervention in the Vietnam War started only a year later. This shows that the country had just started to recognize that discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or natural origin was wrong. And to this day, there are obviously still problems in this country involving the civil rights of not only blacks, but also other people of color, women's, members of the LGBTQ community, different religious groups, and people from different countries. The current significance of this film really adds to Lee's mostly engaging and thought-provoking film. It highlights the disproportionate nature of African American sacrifice in Vietnam. African Americans disproportionately suffered high casualty rates in this war. In 1965 alone, they comprised 14.1% of total combat deaths, when in this country they were 11% of the total population at the time. Furthermore, in 1966, Defense Secretary Robert McNamara initiated Project 100,000, which further lowered military standards for which he said would provide valuable training, skills, and opportunity to America's poor population. As such, this allowed for many black men who had previously been ineligible to be drafted to be now drafted, along with many poor and racially intolerant white men from the U.S. South. This led to increased racial tension in the military, and of all of the newly eligible draftees, 41% of them were black, while they were only constituting about 12% of the entire military. 20% of them were combat soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. At the end of the war, black casualties averaged approximately 12.5% of U.S. combat deaths. In addition to all of that, the film also feeds into the issues of black patriotism, inequality, and justice. In one flashback, the 5 comrades learn of the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Black GI in Memphis, Tennessee. A white man assassinated Dr. Martin Luther King, who heroically opposed the cruel racial discrimination in the USA. Dr. King also opposed the U.S. war in Vietnam.
And also, they learn about the rioting back home in response to his assassination.
Black GI, your government sent 600,000 troops to crush the rebellion. Your soul sister and soul brothers are enraged in over 122 cities. They killed them while you fight against us, so far away from where you are needed.
In this scene, Lee overplays footage of the 1968 riots that really look unfortunately similar to the past few weeks. The film is partially an attempt to reclaim the Vietnam War narrative for black Americans, but it is also a fairly good heist drama. As the film reaches completion of getting the gold, the film is only halfway done. This makes the second half almost uncertain. Along the journey, there is some great cinematography by Newton Thomas Sigel, and the audience gets to know the Five Bloods, the film has the typical jester in Otis, grounded medic in Eddie, and the character Paul, who is still haunted by experience. They're also joined by Paul's son David. I also think how this film shows how these black servicemen fighting overseas isn't new, but I think the way the film approaches it is very fresh. I think that's done in a way because it's a fictional story. This film really has some great performances by the cast. Lee is able to show this squad of having camaraderie that only exists between brothers. The film starts off very similar to films like The Best Man, Girls Trip, Bridesmaid, Going in Style, Las Vegas. You know, the type of genre that has a bunch of friends getting back together to do this big event or one last thing together. And whether you like that genre of film or not, one thing that they always have is chemistry between the starring actors. And this chemistry in this film genre adds authenticity to these characters. And this film is no different in that aspect. All of them have extremely good chemistry and makes really, honestly, every scene enjoyable. But the real standout in this film is Lindo, because his character deals with guilt, greed, and PTSD. And really, he has one of the best performances of the year so far, and his character never really becomes cliche. He represents how a lot of veterans have mental health issues after coming home from war. This film says that people need counseling because of how much that it costs. Some veterans can get that and some can't. It is said fairly early on that Paul doesn't have a lot of money, so he probably can't afford it. He then is shown to be very proud, so even if he had money, he wouldn't admit that he needed counseling. On top of that, this also shows how the older generation as a whole do not really embrace therapy, and this is especially true in minority populations in general. So currently improving, a study published in 2011 in American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry showed that older adult participants endorsed a high level of public stigma and were not likely to be currently engaged in or did they intend to seek mental health treatment. Their results also suggested that African American older adults were more likely to internalize stigma and endorse less positive attitudes towards seeking mental health than their white counterparts. They said that stigma associated with having a mental illness has a negative influence on attitudes and intentions towards seeking mental health services among older adults with depression, particularly African American elders. And thus, interventions to target these stigmas are needed to help those in these populations to get psychosocial mental health treatments. Lindo gives this character a very special performance that really is incredible to see. It is honestly touching when he has a panic attack.
You know nothing about it. You don't have no nightmares. You've been having nightmares. Yeah, he does. Yeah, you do. We all got PTSD. Come on, look. Just bring, come on. Come on, bud. Come on. I see ghosts. You know. What happens to all of us, man? But you seen them too. Yeah.
And he thinks he's alone with it, and that none of his friends are gonna understand. But his friends show that this isn't the case. They all have similar struggles, and that they're in this together. It again gives them this real sense of brotherhood between them. I think all of the actors in this are very good, but definitely Lindo outshines them. Boseman isn't in this film too much, but his charisma still finds a way to show itself. His last scene in the film is very emotional and powerful. There's also this subplot dealing with one of the men and a local Vietnamese woman that touches on the many Ameri-Asian children that were left behind in Vietnam after the war. There's also this other romance story between David and a landmine expert that doesn't really go anywhere unexpected. And then some of the characters do kind of feel awkward in the story because not much is given to their backstory aside from a few one-liners here and there. Even though he is very good, Boseman isn't in the film as much as I think he would have been. He has shown himself to be a really good actor, especially in 42.
Niggas white son of a bitch opens his mouth, I'll smash his goddamn teeth in.
Get him up.
I said, what's wrong, son?
James.
You got something to say, Mr. Bird? Because a man got something to say, he should just say it. You got something to say?
No, sir, Mr. Brown.
Well, then you're just holding up the rehearsal, Mr. Bird. I can't have people holding up the rehearsal. We got to get on, get ahead. Now, you know the rules. If you're late, you're off, or you hold us up. It's no good, Mr. Bird.
And Marshall.
After what your granddaddy did to get his freedom, you're just gonna give it right back for nothing? For something you didn't even do? Understand this, if you want your freedom, you're gonna have to fight for it.
I think that he has shown that he can be a starring actor, and he was honestly the second reason why I wanted to see this film in the first place. I also think Lee's writing has a lot going on in this film, which doesn't use its 2.5-hour runtime extremely efficiently. I legitimately felt that this film could have been over at the halfway point. So much so that I picked up my remote to see how much time was left, and Netflix said about an hour and a half. I do feel that some scenes could have been cut here and there to make the story feel a little bit more fluid, because the pacing of the film has some problems. At the beginning of the film, a lot is going on, it's quick, but then the latter part of the film, it slows down. And I think that sometimes the editing isn't perfect and it kind of seems choppy and can be noticeable at times. There also is no age disparity between the flashbacks and present day. I feel that some of the actors look exactly the same, and I don't say this in the sense of that they should look completely younger, but they still feel to be older than Chadwick Boseman's character. The other actors are about 15 years older than Boseman, but it feels that in the flashbacks that they're still that age difference. And it just takes me out of the time difference between the film a little bit. I do like seeing how the actors are in both scenes. It allows to be familiar with them a little bit more, but I think it is a little bit jarring. In addition, the camera footage that they're taking while they're back in Vietnam, I think it looks very dated, and maybe that's to add some cool aesthetic, or maybe it's the character's only technology that they have, and they don't have an updated piece of technology to take pictures and video, but it feels like there could have been a slightly updated type of technology that could have been used. It doesn't have to be the brand new iPhone, but it could have been something, you know? If they could have explained why they were using that, it would have been better, even though it is a very cool aesthetic. I think also one of the potential flaws for people could be of how obvious Lee's political views are in this film. It makes sense, as he has always been very outspoken on his political views.
I don't call him by his name. I call him Agent Orange. And he is refusing to change the name of bases that are named after people, soldiers, whatever, generals.
The Pentagon has said they're open to it.
But he is saying no. The same way Jewish people feel about the swastika, I feel the same way about the stars and bars.
And I only say this as a flaw because if you weren't a fan of his viewpoints previously, you may not enjoy this film. Overall, even with its odd pacing and not always efficient storytelling, this film has a really good message that it's trying to get across. Spike Lee is one of those few directors that is able to tackle message in both good and bad ways. But when he is able to do it in a really good film, he is able to do it with an extreme amount of brilliance. This film is extremely thrilling at times and uses genre cliches in very unique ways that make them not cliches, and it reclaims basically a historical narrative. It works on pretty much every level. It will work as a conversation piece, an action movie, and a comedy. It brings the audience superb performances, especially by Lindo, and is really able to bring back Marvin Gaye's What's Going On as one of the best anti-war songs of all time.
All the music in this film, The Five Bloods, is very important to me. One of the greatest albums of all time is Marvin Gaye's What's Going On.
Spike Lee has put out a movie that not only speaks about the past, but also feels current. Even if the obvious political opinions are taken out of the film, The Five Bloods is one of the best movies of the year so far. This may honestly push out Inside Man in my list of top Spike Lee films, and it is definitely recommendable to anyone to watch. So what did you think of the film, and what are your favorite Spike Lee films? Let me know. Hit me up on social media. The Formal Review is on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The URL is all the same. It's at The Formal Review. If you follow me, you'll always be able to find the new episodes when they come out, as well as a few trailer reactions on Instagram and Twitter. Feel free to also check out backseatdirectors.com, where I write with the big team movie reviews and also other editorial articles. Please also subscribe to the podcast on your favorite service. It is on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and really honestly anywhere you can find podcasts. Also, I'm always wanting to grow and improve, so feel free to leave a review on your favorite service. I see the numbers and I do this for you all, and I want to keep it entertaining. I really appreciate everyone supporting me by listening and talking about movies with me online. For those who have contributed financially, I really thank you for supporting me in that way. For those who want to financially contribute, please go to anchor.fm/the-formal-review and click support this podcast. And I thank you very much in advance, and any donation is appreciated. Thank you all for tuning in once again, and until next time, well, I won't say it to movies, but be safe, wash your hands, and take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Formal Review. We hope you'll join us again.